Am I allowed to swear? Am I allowed to swear?
I mean, I don't really give a fuck.
There you go. I'll try to not.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be like ghetto style.
Yeah.
But if you swear, you swear.
What's going on, everybody? My name's Dan Wilding, drummer for the band Carcass. And good to be here.
Awesome. This show is about love.
Okay.
There's passion for what we do here. So this is about the love for music. This is why I'm doing this for almost 10 years now, traveling through Germany and Europe and all that stuff. So what is your love and your essence of this whole thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a tricky question. Well, from the youngest age, I always remember wanting to play drums, and I don't really know why. And I remember my friend in primary school got a drum kit, and immediately I was just obsessed with it. And I couldn't put my finger on why it was, because I'd never really noticed drummers before. I just, I like music. My parents had music going on around the house, of course, but it was never specifically drums. But when he got this kit, I was just, I kind of made reasons to go around his house and be like, oh yeah, maybe I could come round again today. And he was, okay, but you came around yesterday. It's like, yeah, but maybe I could go on your drums again. So it was very quickly, I just kind of, I can't put my finger on why, but I was really drawn to the instrument. And then, obviously, after years, kind of convinced my parents to get me a kit. And ever since then, it's just something that, I don't know, it's almost like it's a compulsion, like I have to do it. If there's days when I don't play, even my wife has told me, you're horrible if you don't play drums. So it's almost like it's like a release, it's, I guess because it's so physical. Again, I can't put my finger on why, but it's something that I kind of have to do. It's like a compulsion. Because I tried to play guitar, I tried to play a bunch of different instruments when I was younger, and I just never really got that thing. And then with drums, it was immediate. And I just think about drums probably still more than 50% of the day. Coming up with ideas, or I'm working on a new technique at the moment, and just always trying to do better, or changing my setup to try and make things better. And it's just, it just completely takes over all of my time and my brain space. So I'm very lucky to be able to do it full time, and it's shaped my life. Like I wouldn't have met my wife without music. I wouldn't be in the situation I am now. I wouldn't have most of my friends without it, and so it's kind of following that path has really shaped who I am now and the people I know and the situations I'm in. So it's kind of, I guess I owe everything to drums really, which is crazy. Not everything, I guess, but mostly. Yeah, so it's hard to put my finger on why, but it just grabbed me.
Wouldn't have happened with a trombone, I guess.
Maybe not, exactly. I'm probably not with a guitar, because,
You wouldn't have met a lady, probably.
Exactly.
You're talking generation. There's someone to wait.
As a musician, you want to find your personality on the instrument. And for a drummer, I think probably more than for any other musician, it is very difficult to make the right choices because there are so many. Even after 25 years, I wouldn't say that I'm really there yet. Look at Daniel's kit that looks completely different from the one he had before. It's not a new guitar. It's like, oh, now you have to make entire different movements.
Yeah.
And suddenly entire different ideas come out of you.
Absolutely.
And maybe you play a little different, and you're not the same person anymore than you were before when you had the other drum kit that you made from your own ideas, and it already was your own. But there's a new you. Long question. But,
no, absolutely. I know what you mean, and I feel like
what were your choices? So that is the question.
I think it's one of those things that, again, I guess I'm relatively young, especially in the drumming community and the world in general. But I think it's one of those things. I guess I don't know if you ever get to that final point. What is that final point? And I think that's probably one of the things that keeps us all going is because we never get to that final point. So it's a constant search for new things, and it's like, well, I could be better at this, so let's try this, or oh, this guy's incredible at this thing, I'd like to be better at that as well, so let's do that. And definitely with the kit thing, I always get inspiration from looking at different drummers' kits, and I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. And then you try it, and it's like, oh no, this sucks. So you remove it, and then you try something else, and try something else. But I think it was Benny Greb who said that you play your personality, and that's something that when I first heard it, I was a bit like, well, that doesn't really make any sense. But it's something I've really thought about, and that saying has really meant more because myself, I'm not very prepared. I'm a little bit last minute. I just kind of float around, but, well, you can ask the rest of the band and the tour manager especially. I always forget things, it's quite like everything's just a little bit, in the moment, just, we'll see what happens. And I've realized that's exactly how I am with drumming. Like I don't really prepare that much. Like even with all the albums I've been lucky enough to record, my drums are like 60, 70% finished by the time I go into the studio, and I just kind of, I'll figure the rest out while I'm in there. And same on stage, like I play different things every day. I keep the basic stuff the same, but I play different fills and, again, change my kit around. Like just yesterday, I changed my bass drum pedal settings for no real reason other than just, I'll give that a go. And then I know other drummers who are in their normal life, they are kind of very strict, very regimented, very kind of, they always have a plan. They know what's happening in 2 weeks. They know what's happening in a month. They know what they want to do next year. And the way they approach the instrument is very much like that. They know exactly how long they're going to practice. They've got a plan for what they're going to practice next and all that stuff. And I think that's something I've really started noticing the more people I meet. It's kind of, as you are as a person, really kind of translates when you go on a kit and how you approach a kit, how you approach playing and all that kind of stuff. And I've realized it's kind of trying to be other people. It's kind of impossible because you'll never have their personality because they're so individual. And I guess that's what makes all of us so individual as players. As we all know, I could sit on Daniel's kit or he could sit on mine and it would sound completely different, or completely different things would come out. And it's all part of personality but influences and all that stuff. And I think my thing is to try and kind of realize what my personality is and find the positives in that and kind of emphasize that side of things while also trying to take, the things from other people that I really respect. But I've tried it a lot of times when I was younger, like practice regimes or whatever, or you hear like, I don't know, some of the best guys in the world, they practice 8 hours a day and they could focus. I was like, yeah, I can do that. And then after 45 minutes, I'm like, oh, I'm bored. I just want to play some songs or something, and I realized I don't think that's ever going to be the type of player I am. I'm never going to be an 8 hour a day, just constant practicing guy. I'm going to be the what comes out kind of practicer. And and I think I've realized slowly that's part of my drumming personality. Not saying, obviously I'm wildly unique. There's lots of drummers that are obviously the same, but it's, I think, knowing your own personality and knowing how you are as a person, that's helped me realize what kind of drummer I am a bit more, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Practicing, that's a good segue to one of those things here. In metal drumming, so most of the time when you talk about improving your skills on the drum set, it is about speed, endurance, accuracy, power.
Yeah.
Those things are the crucial things. I'm guilty of that myself a little bit. But on the other hand, it's so limiting because nobody really says, let's really improve on my creativity.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different thing. And that it's so important, I would say. And I wanted to get my brain free. Empty your brain, just be yourself without thinking.
Yeah, which is really hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it's super hard. But one way of doing it for me was taking some songs, not metal, some songs I really like, I really know, I never play to. put them on once and play to it.
Yeah.
So you kind of know the map, but you don't really know what sticking it is. So you play the song your way, and that was kind of getting to where I wanted to be.
What's
and now
in my brain kind of thing.
Or what's in my heart. What is in between those?
True. Actually,
those two motors that you have. So that trains you in being on the spot, super creative. You do something that you would never have thought of, but it's sometimes better than all the stuff you would think of. So have you looked for going outside of your learned stuff to the real you, and have you learned to get more creative?
Yeah, and I think, again, I think that's a constant journey, isn't it? Those kinds of things. We can always work on those kind of things. But I've definitely, and again, going back to the personality thing, ever since I was even a teenager, I was always practicing improvising, if that makes sense. You know, it's kind of like, I'd always had to speak of metal drumming, you know, there's kind of basic stuff you have to do. You can't get faster on double bass if you don't sit down and put the time in. There's no kind of secret method, even though there's some people that try and sell you that there is, but unfortunately there isn't. But yeah, again, I think just because of the way I've often approached it is improvisation has been such a big part of it. Anyway, my struggle is almost the opposite, because I've been in bands where they don't want improvisation. Like they want exactly like the record or exactly like the demo, and I've found that 10 times harder than someone just saying, "Oh, just play something, just do whatever you want." And I think in a lot of ways both of those take practice, because I know a lot of other drummers who are incredible at remembering things exactly as they're meant to be. They play it exactly the same way every day. They write their drum parts before they've even thought about going into the studio, and it never changes. But then when you ask them to improvise, they're like, "What? What does that mean?" So I think, and obviously there's benefits and negatives to both. But I've found with metal generally, it's sometimes a negative being too much of an improviser, because it's very rigid. It's very kind of, there's always a click track. You have to be on the click. The guitars follow the drums, so it has to be perfect every time. So I've come up against more problems because I like to improvise so much. And that wasn't a kind of conscious choice. It was just kind of something that I just kind of did, and I guess it's all about enjoying it, and that's how I enjoy playing drums, just kind of messing around and coming up with things, and oh god, I can't play that, why can't I play that? And then you slow it down and then work on it slowly. But I'm really lucky now with Carcass, because it's kind of the perfect situation, because they're very improvisational, and it's all very kind of, they always want to do different stuff, and nothing's ever totally finished. So even with Surgical Steel, like the way I had like an audition, they played a couple of songs and they were like, "Cool, great, now we're going to write an album." And I was like, "Oh, we're not going to play any shows?" They were like, no, we need to write an album, so we're going to go straight and write an album. And so I met up with Bill, the guitar player, in a little rehearsal room, and he just played me a couple of riffs, and he was like, "What do you think?" "Yeah, they're great." And he was like, "What do you want to play on them?" And I was like, "I don't know." He was like, "Cool, let's just jam. Try a thrash beat, or try like a blast beat, or try like a halftime groove, or let's just try everything and see what comes out, what works the best." That's kind of how they write everything. Like Bill just comes in with a riff and he just says, "Let's try everything, and whatever works best, we'll go with that, or whatever feels best, or blah blah blah." So a lot of the time things start out one way, and then we mess around with them so much, but it's all in the room, with just the two of us, or with Jeff as well sometimes, and they're all like, ideas thrown at each other, and blah, 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 blah. Why don't we try this, or can try this? And it really kind of breeds improvisation. And even in the studio, with the Surgical Steel and Torn Arteries, we changed so many things in the studio, like stuff that we thought was, it's going to be like this. And then by accident sometimes, I played something wrong, or Bill played something different, and that actually works better. That's cool, let's use that. And I think they're super free with that stuff. It's very free. Just get in there, jam it out. No rigid stuff. We never use click tracks or metronomes for even recording or live. It's all just free, kind of. Yeah, and I think that's why some of the songs are quite, meandering, and they kind of go off. There's lots of tempo changes and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I feel like I've finally kind of landed in a situation where, I don't feel pressure to be, well, you need to remember this bit, or you need to remember this bit, which is the stuff I've struggled with more than the just see what happens thing. And I think, again, it's imperative to try and be able to do both. To be able to sit down and, know exactly what you're playing, write parts out, like an orchestra or something. And then I think it's really important to be able to improvise as well. And I guess that's what the best in the world are able to do. They can do both. I know I've got a long way to go on both sides, but I definitely feel more comfortable on the, just go with it, improvisational side of things. So that's why, maybe why they've had me for 11 years now, is that I fit in with that kind of thing. But yeah, I think improvisation is very, very important. And it's very hard, as you say, to kind of truly get out what's in your head, because you're always thinking, oh, maybe I could do something like this guy because that would impress people, or or maybe I could do something like this because I've never done that before, and but to really just let go and just play what's completely, that can be tricky sometimes. Yeah, I guess I don't know what the answer to that is. Maybe the kind of thing that you do, just doing it all the time. It's like anything. You have to practice improvising. You have to practice not improvising. You have to practice, and everything in between. So, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. That was a long answer. Sorry.
Talking about Carcass, when you took the job, you joined a band that already had a very distinctive and elaborated sound. I mean, it influenced so many people. How was it for you to deliver what's expected for Carcass drumming while bringing something of your own personality? Wasn't it that their former drummer had some saying in the parts, if I remember correctly, reading it somewhere?
Not really. Ken, he did on Surgical Steel, he did some vocals, did some backing vocals and stuff. That was the only time he was ever involved in the whole process. But he came in and he listened to everything. And he texted me yesterday. It's funny, actually, but we keep in touch. But he wasn't involved at all since he left, and since the brain aneurysm it was. He always comes to the shows and stuff. But yeah, as far as feeling the pressure, definitely. And it was kind of, I knew immediately I didn't want to be just a rip-off of him. Because I think, as we said before, you can never be someone else. And if you try too hard, then it kind of becomes a little bit, it can be a bit of a joke. It's like, he's just trying to, he's trying to rip off the other guy. But also at the same time, you've got this legacy, and Ken was a really creative drummer. And
I always felt that the drumming and guitar playing was very different from the other death metal bands. Everybody's darling, regardless of if you're into death metal or not. Back in 94, 95, when you watch Headbangers Ball, so many people were totally into that band.
Yeah.
And I guess part of that is maybe it's so dry and so tight, but it's a very distinctive drumming. You kind of had to do at least something in that direction. Don't make it a total different kind of animal.
Absolutely. And I think, again, with Ken as well, it was interesting because learning about him, he wasn't really a metal guy. So a lot of his influences weren't directly metal influences. So I think that's why a lot of it is quite unique and kind of different, and maybe a little bit more creative without, sounding mean to anyone else, but a little bit more, unique than a lot of the other metal stuff, because he wasn't, obviously he loved metal bands, there was a lot of metal bands he loved. I tried to, obviously being a Carcass fan before I joined, I kind of sucked in as much of that as I could, but at the same time I didn't want to step on it and be like, well, I can play like that, I'm just going to do exactly the same as that. So I used Bill and Jeff a lot as, like a guide, because obviously at the end of the day they make the final decision. And amazingly, a lot of the time they would have drum ideas that I wouldn't have even thought of, and they'd be like, oh, try this. There's a couple of bits where, because Ken used to use closed hi-hat a lot, which just no one does in metal, really. And there's a bunch of riffs on the new album and on Surgical Steel where they'd be like, oh, try that, but with a closed hi-hat. I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, that's the kind of thing Ken would do. And then I'd try it, and then it would sound cool, and then they'd be like, yeah, and then, put your own thing on there as well, giving me suggestions, like, oh, try it. Because sometimes we tried it and it didn't sound very good, but every now and again they'd suggest something and it would, it would really work. And I'd be like, oh yeah, and that sounds really like Ken. That's exactly the kind of thing Ken would do. And also, I was quite conscious in trying not to make it too metal, because again, knowing that Ken was not really, this super metal guy that only played metal drums and only listened to metal. So I tried to bring in stuff that wasn't traditionally metal as well. It was a real conscious decision to not just completely try and rip him off, but at the same time, not do something completely wildly different as well. So it was, Surgical Steel was a real, my brain was like, overthinking everything and are you sure this is fine? Yeah, so I used them a lot as a kind of a guide for that kind of thing, because you don't want to ruin the legacy. So
You said that you were like 50% of the day thinking about music and drumming. So are you sometimes rhythmically inspired without a musical context by an idea or something entirely different, not from a musical source, but still?
Yeah, totally. I can't think of examples right now, but definitely. And I think I'm not really into art, but I've got some friends. Our guitar tech, actually, he studied art at university and stuff. And sometimes when I'm shown art, I don't know why, there's just this weird, kind of like, that's, and I don't know what it is. It obviously stimulates something in your brain. But when I get ideas the most is when I'm absolutely not thinking about music. So sometimes I'll just be watching TV, with my wife or something, or going for a walk with no music, and just all of a sudden, it'll just, some kind of sticking or like a riff idea or something will just pop into my head. And I've always wondered if it's because your brain is, properly relaxed and distracted. And these things, because, they say that creativity comes the best at night. And that's often because, all the stresses of the day have disappeared. And so, I totally find that not thinking about it is almost more creative than really trying to think about it. Because, you're putting too much pressure on yourself. I need to come up with something cool. And it's almost better when your brain's just, whoa, and you can, but then you have to remember to write it down, or, say, boom, ka, into your phone or something, because then it'll be gone forever if you don't remember it. But yeah, definitely, it's one of those things that, as I'm sure you know, just creeps up on you, and you don't know why it's popped into your head, or why that or where that idea came from, or it's one of those constant things that you're not, I'm definitely not fully in control of. It just happens when it happens. And you have to kind of, go with it when it happens, and hope you're in a position where you can remember it or something.
When I was in Portugal the other day, I took a meditation lesson. And of course, you try to empty your thoughts, which is not possible because you're thinking all the time. But once I got a little bit more tired, and all of a sudden, 2 questions for the interviews came up, just out of nowhere.
There you go.
Of course, once you're relaxed, same with the improvising stuff, then the best comes out of you, and you are surprised by yourself. This is why I love improvising so much, because when you record it, and then, wow, now I have the idea on tape. From?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, but now it's a song.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a big part of, just music in general. I was going to say metal, but I think just music in general. And, there's a lot of types of music that are more geared towards improvisation. And a lot of the time I find that kind of stuff super inspiring. It's kind of like, where did that come from? Where did this idea come from? Or how did they end up there? It started here, and then how did they end up at this bit in like 9 minutes later or something? It's kind of, I guess it gives you an inside look into the musician's brain, maybe, or the heart, as you were saying. It's totally them, because it's kind of all, it's meandering and all over the place. But yeah, no, totally. I think inspiration comes from everywhere, and you don't really know why or how sometimes. Of course, there's obvious ones, like you hear a song and it kind of, gives you an idea for a rhythm or something. But yeah, sometimes the best stuff just comes absolutely out of nowhere. You've got to do your best to remember it.
funny. All your answers are not in sync with what I thought you are going to be like after preparing for the interview and learning that you have played with Aborted.
Yeah.
Which is one of those brutal death metal bands that are super checked out.
Yeah,
and it's more about all of the same and super perfect and not being unprepared and like, oh, I don't know, man, let's see what comes out of it. Like, it doesn't really match with the expectation I have. Which is not critical in any way. It's just neither good nor bad. It's just like, wow, okay, I feel more the way you feel than
you expected.
with those drummers that are a little bit more like super focused
rigid.
and
absolutely.
super fast. More practice. I can't do this because I'm bored.
Well, and I think the thing was, when I was a teenager, I was totally obsessed with extreme metal and like the really fast stuff. At that age, I don't know if it's whether I had the time or the mental energy, but that was the time I really sat down and I did do all the, those kind of the constant exercises where you're just playing singles for like 5 minutes straight, or you're just playing, and that was kind of my basis for a lot of that stuff. But very quickly I was learning this stuff so that I could play songs. So there'd be a song that I'd want to play along to, and it was way too fast. I was like, how do I get there? I'm not just going to get there by just playing it over and over again and hoping for the best. Today I can play 1 bar. Oh, I played 2 bars today. But I'm not going to get through the whole song. So I realized I had to kind of, go backwards and at least build up some speed. But the minute I kind of got to a comfortable level, it was just playing songs from then. So it was kind of, I still have to do maintenance stuff, as it were, especially with my feet. My feet are definitely worse at maintenance than my hands. The hands kind of happen a little bit easier, maybe because you use them more, I don't know. But feet, I still have to do maintenance stuff. But I only do it for the minimum amount that I have to, because I get so bored. But even as a teenager, it was straight into playing songs. So instead of, once I'd gained some speed and I could play a few songs, it was kind of like, okay, now I've got the feeling of what it's like to play fast. Now I can hopefully just play a slightly faster song and then a slightly faster song. And then joining bands like Aborted, I think I was 18 when I joined them. Touring with those bands, there's many other drummers I've spoken to about this. You can play as much as you want this kind of music in your practice room or, your kit at home, or even in a rehearsal room with your band. But once you tour with it every single day and you're playing 250 BPM blast beats every day for 6 weeks, that's when you really learn, I suck at this. I really need to work on this. Or, you feel, that's pretty good, but this bit is terrible, So touring is, or playing live, not necessarily touring, not everybody has the opportunity to tour, obviously, but playing live as much as you can. I think with all types of music, really, but especially with the fast stuff, you really learn, this is very different to my practice room where everything's super comfortable and there's no one watching me and, I can play to the click perfectly. So the minute you kind of get out into the world and you have all these distractions whilst playing that stuff, that was such a big lesson for me. I remember the first tours I did with Aborted, it was kind of, it was terrifying because I was really young and, I went from like a local band in front of 15 people at the local pub or something to all of a sudden playing in front of at least a few hundred people every day, and I was you get all tense and all this stuff, and then obviously it's all about relaxation, but you don't realize that until you do it a few times and you can't get through the first song and you're like, your wrists a lot of lessons came from playing live as well and realizing how to hold yourself and breathing and all that kind of stuff. I didn't really overthink it. It just kind of it came with the more experience that I got. Again, back to my kind of go with the flow kind of personality that I have. I'm sure there's a lot of guys that would be like, writing this down and learning breath work and different technique. But I was just like, that was really hard today. I'll try and make it better tomorrow. I'm not going to change anything, but I'll try and make it better. So I guess my approach might be different to a lot of people's. But I've always been drawn more to more creative extreme metal drummers. Like Daniel's is super creative. He does a lot of stuff that's not typically metal. Inferno from Behemoth is the same. Dirk Verburen, those kind of guys. Obviously, I love the all that stuff too, but the guys that really stand out are the ones that, draw from outside metal as well. So I think, there we go.
No, absolutely. Same here. Totally agree with you. And the guys you mentioned are my favorites as well. So
There's a reason, I think, isn't it, that these people stand... Well, I assume there's a reason these people stand out, because it's... I'm not saying that anyone can play... But if you sit down with a metronome for long enough, everyone can come up with that stuff. But to come up with something really creative, and as we were talking about, metal is especially extreme metal is very kind of limited because it's so fast and the guitars are so rigid. It's very easy to just fall into those same traps. But the people that can really do some creative, interesting stuff on top of that, they're the ones that really... That's always been the stuff that's inspired me. It's like, whoa, how did he come up with that on top of that riff? I would have just been... And then I guess the more you listen to that stuff, the more you think, oh yeah, he did that kind of... Maybe I could try that kind of thing. Whereas before, it wouldn't have even been an option, because, and listening to music that's not metal as well helps. Metal drumming's impressive, but when you've got people like Virgil Donati or Matt Gasker or, those guys, it's like, oh, well, God, that's a whole other level. Absolute another level of drumming. They've got the speed, creativity, all the stuff in one package. So
it's one big pocket, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, to be able to grab everything in the pocket is, you need a lot of time and a lot of work. Bye everyone. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and see you again soon.
Thank you so much, sir.
No worries. Thank you, man. That was a pleasure.
Bye-bye, or whatever.
Thanks for watching.